Welcome to the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. Today's episode is brought to you by Collins Aerospace. For over 4 decades, Goodrich rescue hoists have saved countless lives across the globe. You can find them at collinsaerospace.com. Next, we have Switlik Survival Products. Switlik manufactures the highest quality safety and survival products for the aviation, marine, and military markets. You can find them online at switlik.com. Ready Swimmer, training the body, sharpening the mind, and building leaders. Go check them out at readyswimmer.com. And finally, the Real ResQ Store. Find all of your gear for your favorite podcast at therealresqstore.com. Welcome to episode 200. My name is Melissa Quinn, and I'm the special guest host for today. I'm sitting here with Rotorblade Quinn, our very special rescue puppy, so that we can introduce our favorite U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer, number 500, Jason Quinn.
My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast.
Welcome to the Real ResQ Podcast. We have a very special episode today. I get to be the guest host. My name is Melissa Quinn, and I'm here with rescue swimmer number 500, Jason Quinn. Hello.
Hey, love.
Today is a special episode because it is episode number 200.
200.
Yes, it's exciting.
Wow.
I know. We started this in our kitchen 3.5 years ago, and we recorded episode number 1.
And here we
just
are.
On a whim at like 8 o'clock one night. And now we are 200 episodes later.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing.
It's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for all of the listeners and the sponsors and everyone who has supported us in this venture that you dreamt about for years.
And when I was done, or no, let me rephrase that. When you were done listening to me, it was like either do it or stop talking about it. And here we are 200 episodes later.
I know. Very proud of you.
Hey, thanks, love. I appreciate
You worked
it.
very hard. So thanks for having me as the guest host for today. We will probably have some cameos by Rotorblade, who has decided he has to sit here with us.
On you the
On
whole
me.
time.
He loves me.
Yeah. Awesome. So in this in particular episode, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to share a couple more of my rescue stories and stuff from just throughout my career. I mean, I've been doing this for over 20 years and I've seen some cool stuff. I've done some cool stuff, or at least I think it's pretty cool. I enjoy telling the stories and listening to other people and what they're doing. So I thought this would be a good opportunity. Now, our girl Kim, who is a major help in all our social media stuff.
So grateful for Kim.
Yeah, shout out to her. Thank you so much. She came up with the idea of, hey, why don't you ask the audience questions and see what comes back? So what we did is she helped draft a bunch of social media posts and then said, hey, send your question in and we'll answer them. Well, it was kind of cool because the questions Mel's going to run through the questions, but when the questions got sent, it actually started making me think about a whole bunch of the rescues that I've been a part of. And I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to answer the questions and I'm going to tell the story, the full story of the rescue itself that I was involved with. So,
There's some good questions here.
totally. So that's I think the short version, and I think that's how we're going to run this thing today.
Sounds awesome.
All right.
You ready?
I am.
All right, we'll start with some of the career questions before we get to the podcast questions.
All right.
Okay.
And we are going to shout out everybody that asked these questions too. So,
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Full name or just
Whatever's
first
there.
name?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay. All right. Question number 1 was sent to us by, it was a guest on this podcast, Mr. Harry Knight. He was more one of the recent guests too. Second time
Yeah,
guest.
second time. He's got 2 episodes. It's kind of one of the few.
All right. Well, his question that he sent was, if you didn't go into the Coast Guard, as a rescue swimmer, what do you think you would have been doing?
Oh, buddy, I would have been a Navy rescue swimmer. No, that's a lie. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's a great question. I thought I was actually thinking about that quite a bit. And I think had I not joined the Coast Guard or had I not gone down the military path, I probably would have ended up working with my father in construction and doing restoration work on steeples, domes, and towers. It's something I grew up doing with him. And even right after I graduated high school, I continued on to do that with him for multiple trips. We went down to North Carolina, we were in Connecticut, and just painting steeples, repairing them, making them look beautiful again. So as a fellow gold leafer, there's an inside joke there.
Inside joke, yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's what I would have done. I think that's what I would have done had I not joined the Coast Guard. There was other career fields that I was looking at. I debated on being a pilot as well. I didn't have the college degree to do that in the military. I was unaware of the Army way that you could go into the warrant program and be a pilot that way. So, and again, my own due diligence, I didn't do the research. So had I asked a question, I think it might have been a little bit different, but I never asked a question. So I don't know. I going to lean back towards, I think I probably would have ended up my dad in construction and possibly taking over his business. And
we would not be in Saudi Arabia.
So good call. Thanks, Harry.
All right. Question number 2 could be a heavy one. I don't know what your response is going to be. The question came to us by Anisha. And it says, tell us about one of the rescues that made you most emotional, one that you can remember.
So I have a couple. I'm going to talk about 3 in particular. So the first one was out of Kodiak, Alaska. Now, don't get me wrong. The 2 biggest ones that I ever had, episode number 1, I received an air medal with my crew. The whole crew got an air medal. It was an amazing rescue. My very first one. Episode 100 is the biggest rescue I've ever had. And that was another emotional rescue. And that earned me the Distinguished Flying Cross and the rest of our crew air medals. An amazing, amazing event.
That was episode number
100. Yeah. And then we get to talk to the captain of the vessel in episode 101. And then Kendall Guerin, one of my pilots, came on in episode 111. So, however, there are 3 rescue missions that stand out to me. And the first one is out of Kodiak, Alaska as well. So I'd already done the 2 big ones. And I remember standing duty. It was kind of early evening. I'm going to call maybe 8, 9, 10, might even been 11 at night. So maybe a little bit later. But from where Air Station Kodiak is, if you look at it on a map, there's like a bay, and then on the other side of the bay, there's almost like a peninsula. And then on the other side of that, there's another little peninsula. And in order to get to the peninsula that's right across from where the air station is, it takes probably, without exaggeration, like 45 minutes to drive there. And then even the road doesn't actually end at the peninsula. You actually have to kind of hike in or use quads and whatnot to get into that area. So this in particular day goes off and the alarm goes off and says, hey, we've got a medevac of an injured victim on such and such peninsula. And all of the crew looked at each other and was like, that's like, we can walk out the door and I can look and I can see exactly where that is. I can see it. Why are we taking a helicopter out there? So we launch out. As a matter of fact, my flight mech was Wes Powell, and I will never forget that. Wes, my boy Wes. I still laugh at this today, and I'll explain why in a sec. So we take off. We land on the other side, on the other peninsula, and there are fire trucks and ambulances everywhere, and there's lights everywhere, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? So a guy by the name of Dave Billings, he's one of the medics that was and firefighters there on Kodiak Island. And he was also in the Coast Guard, got out of the Coast Guard, is still there from what I understand. But anyway, so he was one of the rescue guys on scene. Well, backtrack is the local kids, and I'm going to call them kids, teenagers, Uh, some of the kids in high school, junior, senior, they had gone out there for a major party, a rager. Woo, let's have a good time. And they had a bonfire going. They had a bunch of booze. They were legitimately having a good time. Now, I'm going to sidestep and say they were out there to have a good time. I remember being a teenager at one point. I remember going to parties like that. I don't condone it. I'm not advertising for it, but I was one of those guys that had done that in my life. I think you can say the same.
No.
You're such a liar.
No, Catholic school.
Yeah, Cal. So when we land, there's all these people that are around, and I walk out to Dave, and I'm like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, we need the litter. We've got this girl, and she was kind of run over by a four-wheeler." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" The way I understand the story is that they were messing around, and the four-wheeler rolled. She was on the four-wheeler as they were driving, and it rolled, and the driver got thrown off, I believe, and the four-wheeler then flipped and crashed onto her, specifically really onto her face. So she could still talk, she was still awake, but she was busted up. And I remember loading her into the aircraft, into the litter, and I remember her like really screaming, wanting a lot of help and wanting to be assured that she was okay. And I was like, all I could say to her is like, I've got you and I'm here for you. Like, and when I tell you the flight from takeoff to landing was 5 minutes, that might be an exaggeration. It was not long, but let's go 5. I'll even say 10. It was 10 minutes. And I don't think it was, I don't think it was 10 minutes. I literally think it was 5 minutes. So, and this is where Wes Powell comes in, and I'll always remember why he was my flight mech, because he could not stand the sight of blood.
He was a flight mech?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And so he got into the aircraft, and as we're loading her in, he would turn away, and he wouldn't look at the patient, and he would like say over ICS, he's like, "Quinny, if you need anything, let me know. I just need to know when I need to look so I can close my eyes, and then I know when to open them." I'm like, "What is wrong with you, dude?" He's like, I can't stand the sight of blood. I'll throw up."
It was a child too. I mean, teenager.
Teenager.
That's hard.
Yep. So I was like, all right, you know what, Wes? Don't worry about it. I've got this. It's only a 5-minute flight. We'll be back on the ground. I'm going to hand her off to another ambulance, and we're good to go. Well, I'm going to call it a 20-minute period. So there was the time we picked her up off the ground, and we're bringing her back into the helicopter. And again, the whole time I'm trying to tell her, I'm trying to reassure, I'm here for you. We're going to be back on the ground in a second. We're going to get you to help. We're going to get you to everything, whatever we can get you to, we're going to get you to. One of the things I do remember specifically in EMT school was you never tell the patient that it's going to be okay, because that's false reassurance. Right. Like, it might not be, and you don't want to do that, especially to the patient and or the family. So anyway, I'm going to get you there. We're going to do everything we can. So I remember vividly, once we got into the cabin of the aircraft, I'm kneeling over her. I had a gunner's belt on, and I'm kneeling like beside her, and I'm holding her hand. Wes, wow. Wes closes the cabin door, and I'm kneeling next to her, and I'm looking at her, and her face is like so blown up. It's black and blue. You can see the blood where it was pooling like under her eyes, and she's turning into raccoon eyes. She was missing teeth out of her front teeth. Both bones in her face were fractured, and you could just tell she was in a ton of pain. And I remember holding her hand. Sorry. I remember holding her hand as we took off, just trying to reassure her that it was going to be.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there.
Yeah. That we were going to get her to better help. Dang.
The question did say that rescue that made you emotional. So
I got you, Anisha. I'll get through it. I promise. So when we took off, I was holding her hand and she was squeezing my hand. And for those that have never been in a helicopter, when you take off, it's a violent vibration. So we take off and I'm holding her hand. I'm like, I got you. I'm not going to let you go. We fly the 5 minutes back to the air station where there's an awaiting ambulance. And as we're landing, she's, wow. Dang, babe. Oh, thanks, Anisha. No, I'm just kidding.
maybe we should have asked this one last.
No, it's all right. So as we're coming in, I'm holding her hand and just reassuring her that she's okay. And we coming through it's called ETL, and it's just coming into landing, and the helicopter is vibrating, and she's scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear her over my helmet and over the helicopter. It was like, and that was it.
Yeah.
We landed. We handed her off to the ambulance, and I let her hand go after somebody else grabbed her other hand. I have no idea what happened next. I heard they life flighted her up to Anchorage. And all I remember is sitting there thinking is like, in the 10 minutes that I was with her, I just hope that I gave her enough reassurance that we were all there for her. And that was my, yeah. I can't say I know what the outcome was. I had heard through the grapevine it wasn't a good one, but I don't know. I hope she made it. I hope she lived a happy life. I hope she's doing amazing right now. So that was.
Is it hard not knowing? Like, are you glad through most of your career you don't know the endings? Because that's a very common theme on the podcast. People don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it'd be nice to maybe have a little closure to it, good, bad, or indifferent. And other side of it, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's part of the job, and you embrace it and you accept it. So, dang, that was one.
That was one. Do you want to talk about three?
Yeah. I'll go with three. I gave you.
All right.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Switlick. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlick Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlick.com.
All right, so number two. Number two is out of Humboldt Bay, California. This one stands out to me, which I don't know if this will be as emotional as that one, because it was just different. So we get called out. There were reported people in the water in the surf, and that in particular day. So in Humboldt, California, it's very northern California, and when you get to a spot known as Big Lagoon and Freshwater Lagoon in that area, the lagoons are, and actually this one specifically was Freshwater Lagoon, and I remember that because the road there, Route 101, splits the two, splits the ocean and Freshwater Lagoon. So the story that I understand is there was a family, a mother, a daughter, and then the mother's friend who was about 22 years old, give or take, a family friend. They had driven up to Oregon to go to an event, and I don't know the event, but I know that they were up in Oregon. They were from Sacramento area off the top of my head. So anyway, so the event was over. They're driving 101 back. They're like, oh, hey, it's a beautiful day. Let's drive the coast back to Sacramento. It'll be fun. You know, whether they came from inland Oregon to the coast or on the coast, whatever it was, they were driving the coast back. So they stop at Freshwater Lagoon, pull off. There's a beautiful parking area right there. And you go down to the beach, and then the beach was gorgeous that day. I specifically, vividly remember the beach being beautiful. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was nice weather. And you know, from being in Humboldt Bay, it's not always warm. And this in particular day, I remember walking around the air station with my flight suit tied around my waist in a short sleeve shirt and being like, man, it's kind of warm today. So the call comes out, people in the water, and we're like, okay, let's go. And as soon as we heard Freshwater Lagoon, I was like, oh man, that's another like 5-minute flight away from the air station. It's not far.
Not far.
Yeah, we could drive there in 15 to 20 tops.
We used to walk Fenway there
All the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we get over, we get it like taken off, and I'm immediately into my rescue swimmer gear. Immediately. And we roll up on scene. We're starting to do a beach search because we know they're in the surf. And we come up within, again, 5 minutes, and that might be an exaggeration, but I'll say 5-10 minutes. There's the first person we see in the surf. So they're like, Quinn, are you ready? I'm like, yeah, I'm good to go. Helmet comes off. I come off ICS, and they hoist me down into the water. I don't remember my flight mech at the time. He was on point. Oh my gosh, the dude was on point. But my pilot at the time was Rick Christopherson. Super great pilot, great stick. I believe he was the executive, he might have been the ops boss at the time. Anyway, so we come on scene. He rolls up. He sets it up, and like 45 degrees from the beach. He's got a beautiful view of the beach, the surf, and all he's doing is following the surf line based on the conning commands of the flight mech. So they put me down right into the water, and like my flight mech was on point. Dropped me literally like on top of her, where I grab her, but I only grabbed her wrist, and it was like, actually I grabbed the upper part of her arm right by the elbow, and at the same time we get hit by a breaker. Now, let me back up just a little bit. The waves in particular on that day were pretty decent size. So the waves coming in, and that beach in particular has a deep slope on the sand. So what had happened is the breakers came in, and one in particular, like bigger wave came in and took the little girl in the water. So now the 21-year-old goes in, or 22-year-old, and then mom goes in to go get the daughter. The little girl washes out, and the 21-year-old, she was trying to battle through the surf. Now that water temperature is only like 52, 53 degrees. It's cold. I don't know Celsius off the top of my head. I can't remember. But it's somewhere, it's cold. And they're in like jeans and t-shirt, short sleeve shirt. Again, it's a beautiful day in Humboldt. Mom gets out of the surf and crawls up the beach, like getting pounded by waves, but she's able to crawl up. So now I've got the 22-year-old in my grasp, right? She's getting tumbled by waves. And when I grabbed her, we get tumbled by a wave, but I'm still connected to the hoist hook. So I just go taut, and I remember holding her, and she's sliding out of my hands. And thank God she had a wristwatch on. And I remember my hand sliding to the wristwatch, and the wristwatch, like literally like almost bending out where it dug into her wrist and into her skin to be able to put the grip on it so that I could hold her through the wave. Once the wave is done, so that first boosh, grab her, I'm holding her, I pull her in tight, I wrap my arms around her, and I just look up to the helicopter and just give a nod, like, get me out of the surf right now. And again, my flight mech was on point. He knew, he's like, I got you. We come up out of the water, and we're just at water level. I'm literally bear hugging this lady, and we slide over to the beach, and then he puts me down nice and easy on the beach. And I remember trying to get off the hoist hook on this in particular one, which was like, and I couldn't get it off. And what I think happened was that there was a lock on the hoist hook in particular, and the slide lock was jammed with sand, and I couldn't get off the hoist hook to like help. So it took me a minute to get off the hoist hook. And once I got off, they backed off, and I sliding her up the beach, and I'm pulling her up the beach. And I remember the spot of, or that moment in time where I'm looking at her, and I'm seeing one eye looking at me and the other eye looking away from me. And it was like a glazed over, like you knew she was gone, little foam out of the mouth, but I vividly remember her face as well. And that one really stuck with me. We had two like park rangers or something like come over to me, and I looked at them. I'm like, guys, I got a little girl to go look after. I need you guys to start CPR and try to help her and revive her. And the two of them looked at each other like, he wants us to do what? Like we all knew, but we can't declare it.
Right.
So it was like, we need to try. So needless to say, I remember that vividly. We leave there. I run back down into the water. I dive into the surf. They pick me up out of the water. And the reason I jumped back into the water is because I was covered in sand. I didn't want to get covered in sand in the aircraft. So, and then we flew for the little girl, and we flew and we flew and we flew. At that same time, while we're searching, there's a 47-footer coming up from Station Humboldt Bay. So they're driving up. We've got another crew coming in to man another helicopter to then come out. That, as a matter of fact, that swimmer was Sean Lesko, and the flight mech for that was Dmitry Tokarski, Tabowski. Dmitry. I remember Dmitry specifically. Anyway, so we're searching. We run out of fuel. We're going back to the air station to get fuel, and then we're going to turn around and meet the second helicopter, which is on scene at that moment in time to help. So we go back, we're getting gas, and we hear over the radio that the little girl was found. And I'm like, oh man, awesome. CPR is in progress. We're like, oh. So I didn't have any direct contact with the little girl. I only had direct contact with the 21, 22-year-old. So they bring the little girl directly to the hospital. They pronounce her just almost as soon as they get there. You know, Sean and Dimitri did an amazing job with CPR in the back of the aircraft. As far as the girl that I had, the ambulance picked her up and they pronounced her as soon as they get to the hospital as well. And I really, truly feel for the mom because she was there to be watch the whole thing. And I feel for her. But one of the things that I remember from that one is that I'm driving home. We do a debrief of that. Is there anything we could have done different or better? And out of all the debrief, we believe that we did everything in our power. We were off the ground in minutes. We were on scene in minutes. I was in the water in minutes. The little girl was found shortly thereafter. It wasn't too much longer. And when the debrief was done, they were like, okay, you guys that were on duty, myself, so my crew, they were like, go home. You guys are done. They actually called in a third crew to relieve the guys that had just done CPR on the little girl. And it's kind of good on the Coast Guard for this one. So they asked everybody at that moment in time and in that debrief, hey, if anybody needs to talk to anybody, let us know. Well, I can tell you from me personally, I was so jonesing on adrenaline. I'm like, dude, I could take over the world right now. I freaking drop, let's go. We were like, okay, everybody go home, come back tomorrow, let's chat, da-da-da-da. And I remember pulling out of the air station, and I lived in the same town as the air station, so I wasn't far away. And I come to a four-way stoplight or a four-way stop sign, and instantly I'm losing it in the car. I'm like, what just happened? And a lot of that hit me because she was young, the girl I picked up, and I could see her face. And then thinking about the little girl, like I'm going home to my 3 little girls right now that are the same age as the girl that we just lost. And it just, that one hit me really hard for actually quite a while. And,
And how many times do we just make the decision, hey, let's just go to the beach today?
oh yeah.
They just made a simple decision, and
Yeah. Tragic. It was a bummer. So yeah, that was another tough one.
yeah, I
Yeah.
have heard that one.
Yeah. So I'm glad I didn't bust up on that one too.
You've told that one a few times, like
Yeah.
out loud, so maybe that's helped.
Yeah. The
I
last one.
remember being at that beach after and you giving me, and I'll say a lecture because it was a lecture. And you never lecture me, but I got the lecture that if the dog ever went out in that water and got taken away, you will not go in after the dog.
No.
Those waves are sneaky.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
why.
And the water's cold.
Yeah.
It's deep. It's
And like you mentioned, it drops off. And,
yeah.
and those people being from out of town wouldn't know that.
Nope.
Yeah.
So that was number 2. All right, one more.
All right.
The last, and this is one of the last missions I was actually on, which is conveniently and randomly enough. So I'm out training with a new crew, and I remember like the helicopter. We were just going to go out for the day. We're going to do some hoist training to a vessel. The guys that I was with, I won't mention anybody's name right now because I just won't. Super good dudes, hands down, amazing guys to work with. The 2 pilots I had never flown with. The trainer that was with us, I had never flown with him, but they're all giving us a truck dive for me and the guy that was with me. But all of us are medically trained, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going out to train, and over the radio is called, hey, we've got a medevac. There's CPR in progress on the beach. Well, we're like 7 minutes away. Like from current location, we're 7 minutes away. Now, mind you, we were going out on a training flight, and we didn't have like all of the medical gear. We didn't have everything, nor am I like under that medical director. So
Okay.
if we had turned around to go back to the air station to pick up the medic and all the gear, it would have been, I think we equated it about 35 minutes, or we're there in 7.
Yeah.
So we did the math. We had a full conversation in the aircraft, and we decided, you know what? The best thing for that patient right now is for us to go. We all know CPR. We all know what we're doing. Here's what we have for an airway kit inside the aircraft right now. We are this far from location back to the air station or back to the airport to then do our thing. I'm like, let's go. So we divert from training. We go, we land on the beach. Me and the other 2 dudes, we jump out and we go walking over to the victim who's, again, CPR in progress on the beach.
Okay.
And we looked at the situation. The guy, our instructor that was there was not a local, but he lived on the island and he was part of the crew itself. So he took the pass down directly from the people on scene. My partner and I, who I was there with training, him and I looked at each other and say, hey, let's just pick the guy up. Let's get these 2 people as well. I'll take an arm, you take an arm, you take a leg, and the other person will take a leg. We'll walk them back to the helicopter. And then we'll work on him in the helicopter. Great idea. So pick him up. We're walking right over to the helicopter. We slide the victim in. Now, mind you, no litter, no backboard. I mean, this is just go. The brief that we had, the pass down that we had gotten for the victim is that he was in the water. Something happened. He went underwater, and then they pulled him out and were trying to revive him. What we think happened is we think he either suffered from a stroke or a heart attack, collapsed in the water, ingested the water, and so now there was a near drowning plus either a cardiac arrest or stroke.
Medical emergency.
Right. So when we get him in the aircraft, my partner and I, again, my guy that I'm training with, him and I are starting CPR. He's pulling an airway kit out to get the airway open and get a bag valve mask going. I'm doing compressions, and then our instructor comes in and jumps in the aircraft with the man's wife. So now this is not abnormal to take family that's there. Now, what to paint this picture even more, we had flown to another like secluded beach. So there was no way that she would have had to take, without exaggeration, 3 hours boat ride back to the beach. So it was just, it made more sense to bring her into the helicopter, right? So now for me, I didn't know this at the time, is that I'm working on her husband on the floor of the helicopter, chest compressions, and my boy's on the other side, airway, and we're switching off back and forth. Our instructor comes in, the wife comes in and sits in one of the seats and belts in. This is where this gets emotional for me, is that I have this person that's I'm going to go into a little graphics. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're doing chest compressions. We have broken his ribs for sure. 100%. Because we are getting a definite 2 inches of compressions. And for those that know CPR, that is an accurate 2 inches on a male adult. So we're doing compressions. We have good ventilations. And if we have a bad ventilation, I yell at my partner. I'm like, no good. Head tilt, chin lift, reset. Boom. Good breath. So we're communicating this. Well, I take my break and our instructor jumps in and he starts doing CPR. And in the back, now I turn around and I see the wife. And all she does is she puts her hand on my shoulder and she says, "Is he going to be okay?" And I'm looking at her like, "Ma'am, we're doing everything we can. We're going to get you to good care." Yeah. And I was like, and I had to turn away from her because now I'm tearing up in the helicopter. I'm like, I got a job to do.
And
like,
the wife is here.
Hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my gosh. Because I wasn't totally prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for her to be there and to watch what we were trying to do on her husband, like trying to bring him back. So that one sit hard. So we're on our way back. We're still doing compressions. He's vomiting all over the inside of the aircraft. We're still breathing for him. We're trying to do suction. We're trying to turn the body so that all the fluid can come out of his nose and mouth. And what we think that part of it was the aspiration, any of the water that was in his lungs is now coming out because it was sputum. Not that I want to get too graphic and disgusting, but that's what it was. And next thing you know, you got blood and water all over the inside of the aircraft. It was terrible. So we land again, about 15 minutes worth of CPR. We're still doing good compressions. We've still got good breath. I'm trying to fight back tears, listening to his wife be like, "Is he going to be okay? Is he going to be okay?" And I'm like, we're doing everything we can.
Also talking to him like, "Hang in there."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember. I do remember this story now.
Yeah. And so we land, cabin door comes open. We have our medic who is like with us. He's a trainee as well. It just so happened he didn't come on this in particular flight with us. Solid medic. And again, he's not under medical direction. He's not, but we end up rolling up an airway kit and without hesitation, he's like, boop, he's pulling stuff out, drops an intubation, continues to get good ventilations. We get him on a full-on monitor. And like while we're there breathing for him, they give him the first round of epinephrine. Again, we're in the zone. We're just doing what we're trained to do. Mm-hmm. That's what. There was no question. And
this happened just a few years ago. So you're already 20 plus years in. You're in the zone. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. And so do the other, like, 4 guys with me, or the other 3 guys.
I just say that because you keep saying you were in training. This was not 25 years ago in training. This is
This was this was training to check a box
Right.
to make sure we were good to go.
Right.
So, but anyway, so our medic drops a tube, epinephrine, and all of a sudden we've got a pulse, and we're like, holy shit, it worked.
Yeah.
We're sitting there still doing like everything that we need to do. We don't have a shockable rhythm because he now has a pulse. And next thing I know, we're loading him into the ambulance. We had to push the ambulance to actually take him. Like they were like, and they're kind of standing around looking at us, and we're like, get him in the ambulance, go to the hospital. Yeah. He has a pulse. And we were still breathing for him, so he wasn't breathing on his own. But so we unload him, we drop him into the helicopter or into the ambulance, and boom, they take off. And that was like, done. And all of a sudden I could breathe. So the emotion that hit me so hard was then gone. I was like, oh, all right, cool. We did everything we could. We got him to the hospital. Like, it was good on us. Well, come to find out the next day. So that guy, the patient lived, and he lived for an additional 2 more days in the hospital there on the island. And then they pronounced him, if I remember correctly, his brain damage. Like he didn't have anything left, brain function wise. But the best part of that was that his wife, because they were there on vacation, was able to say goodbye. So as much as that sucks, and it's tough to talk about, it was, yeah. So that was that rescue.
It adds a different layer when the family is right there.
Very much so.
Because it makes that patient human.
Yes. Yeah, it's not just somebody you're working on.
And the 3 stories you've told for your emotional ones have a connection to you. You had the girls. You had the wife that would have been in the helicopter.
Totally.
Not calm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was, you're right. Those are a big part of it. Because I've had other ones where it's like, you have deceased victims that are in the helicopter, and you're just like, whatever.
Right.
Like, it is what it is. We're just a body transfer. No emotion, no care in the world. And it's it might sound a little dark, but you can't get wrapped up on that. It's when there's that connection personally, or again, that lady putting her hand on my shoulder, I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, anyway. Yeah. Thanks, Anisha. Gosh, we've only been through 2 questions. This is crazy. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at readyswimmer.com or through therealresq.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready?
All right, next question came from someone named Andy. Was there ever a mission where you thought to yourself, I'm not making it out of this one?
Nice. Actually, no, there is not. Every mission that I've ever been called on, I have always felt comfort knowing that I've got an amazing crew around me that will get all of us home. From pilots to flight mech, the whole crew. I've actually never felt like I wasn't going to get out of something that we were in. And then I personally have not been put into a spot where I didn't think I could get out of it. And some of that I'm going to equate to the training, the Coast Guard training that I went through, and the mentality that comes with that. But man, not me. I can't speak for everybody else, but
well,
go ahead.
I remember a story.
Go ahead. Here we go.
This had to be 8 years ago or so. You were gone at work. You might have been at a training. No, you were working. And you came home and you wouldn't stop hugging me. Like, I know that sounds funny because you hug me all the time, but like you kept just walking into the room I was in and bear hugging me. And I was like, oh, this is nice. He missed me. Oh, okay. But after like a couple, like 10, 12, I was like, okay, this is getting a bit much. He hasn't been gone that long. And I remember saying to you, like, why do you keep hugging me so much? Are you okay? Do you remember this now that I'm saying it?
Nope.
And you were like, well, I almost died the other day. And I was like, what? You were on the cliff, like on the side of a cliff, hooked into a cliff. Like you were.
Yeah. Training.
You were
Training. Yeah, I remember.
hooked. Were you hooked in? Were you something?
Yeah.
And the person watching your hand signals misread your hand signal and started pulling the helicopter away when you were still attached to the cliff.
Yes.
And you had to like whip the knife out and cut something off
Cut the rope.
so you wouldn't be torn in half.
There might be an exaggeration in that, but yeah. So the short version is...
That's what I remember.
That's funny.
Because ignorance truly is bliss as the spouse of somebody in your world. So to hear you tell me that, and you kept hugging me, and I love your hug, but you hugged me a lot, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I do remember that day. I remember that day very well, actually. There's a rule.
So you might have had a split second where you thought you weren't making out of that one. All right, tough guy. Let's go on to the next question.
Here's the only thing I'll say to that, ready, is that from that training incident, one of the rules in the helicopter rules of operation for the Real ResQ is always pack a knife. That's where that rule came because of that day.
Yeah.
Always pack a knife.
Lesson learned then, right?
Hey, thanks at Andy_Bailey17.
All right. Next question comes from someone whose hashtag, is that what I call it? Is beachbum12.
Oh, at beachbum12.
Yeah.
And
Is it called? Oh, it's a handle, not a hashtag.
Right, handle.
I'm not in with the no. What was the most stressful rescue you've done?
All right. So there's outside again of the very first one that I went down on, episode 1 and then 100, right? So those were stressful in itself. I do remember 2 other ones that stand. You know what? One of them that stands out to me vividly is actually I was a hoist operator at the time, and I was in the Gulf of Mexico. We get called out for a victim that had like appendicitis or something on a ship. Well, there was a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico at the time, so it was all the ships were pushing away from the hurricane that were coming in.
Of course.
I've got William Wakefield is my pilot. Who's my co-pilot? I want to say we just call him BJ. Anyway, and then my 2 other crew members, Ashley and Jesse, like swimmer and medic, and the waves were like 10 to 12 feet, maybe occasional 15. And this boat is just freaking rolling over these waves. And again, they're running away from the storm. And we're coming back in to pick this patient up. And that moment in time, when I'm getting ready to put them down onto this boat, moving boat in 10 to 12 foot waves, I was like, that in itself was the stressful moment, because it was I'm putting my friends down onto a big boat. And I think part of it was because I knew what they were going down into, and I knew Jesse could take care of him. He was prior Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and I know Ashley had no problem with it. But if I wasn't sure if Ashley had ever actually seen anything that big at that time. And again, I know Jesse could take care of it. For me, I wasn't sure. So that was a stressful point. And then to be able to get them and the victim off, I was like, oh man, don't mess this up. And the boat's going into the waves. And like our helicopter movement, William was on point with his flying, because then I remember kind of flying over the ship, and then the ship would hit the trough and slow down. and we'd be coming towards the stacks. And I'm like, stop forward, back, hold. And he was just like, I got you, man. I got you. I was like, all right, cool. I appreciate it. I said, I'm not trying to like overdo it, but I don't want to run into the smokestack or the large part of the ship. And they're like, no, we're good, man. We're good. And I'm trying to get him. And again, I like, but boy, I know you're a flight mech, so you get it. But that was probably a stressful environment for me. Or one of them. So yeah.
You're stressed because you wanted the people you were working with to be safe.
Correct.
It wasn't when you were in
No.
15-foot seas.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, the victim was good to go. The hoist went smoothly. We got him off. We got him back to the hospital. Everything was good, and we had a good debrief. Nobody was hurt. It was great. It was great. But that was a stressful one for me.
All right. Next question comes from someone named Maverick. Do you prefer being in the helo hoisting or being the guy on the hook?
I love both positions, but if I have to pick one, man, I'm the guy on the hook all day long.
Adrenaline junkie.
I love being on the hook. Every rescue I've been on, every training flight, anytime that I'm going out, I'm all about being on the hook. I love being on the ground. I love being in the environment and doing the job. Not saying that I don't love being a hoist operator, because I do.
No, you just had to pick
fun.
one. Yeah,
I know. If I had to pick one, I'd be the guy on the hook. So, thanks for the question, Maverick.
I knew what you're going to say to that one.
Of course you did.
All right. Is there a noticeable difference in your adrenaline based on performance or training? And this is by Haley.
Yes, our lovely daughter. Aw. Thanks, Haley. So
I think she was the first question that came in.
Yeah, I think so. So here's what I will say to that is this: absolutely. So there's adrenaline rush when you're doing training for sure. It's why we love to do training and stuff and hanging off the helicopter or cliffs or whatever. But when it comes to actually getting a victim or getting into position where you know you're going to affect something that's outside of training, now your elevation, your adrenaline goes up just a little bit higher. And we've heard it on this podcast multiple times that's why it's so addicting. Everybody wants that rescue because everybody gets that like adrenaline rush. And for everybody that's out there that's listening, they're like, oh yeah, I've had that. I know exactly what we're talking about. So when it comes to the performance and or game day or on scene, that's where the adrenaline goes through the roof. And it is, yeah. So
again, adrenaline junkie. All right. The next question is from someone named Chatty Cathy. Can you share a funny or unexpected moment from one of your missions that always makes you laugh?
From one of my missions. I think, let's see. Funny moments. You know what? I don't know if there's any funny moments like off the top of my head when you have.
It could be the people that you're working with, I suppose.
I'll give you two. The first one is and both of them are medevacs. So I was flying down in the Gulf of Mexico with this one. We get launched out. This is the first one for a, whatever it was, this kid had hurt something or whatever it was. So we get on scene, we land on the helipad, load the patient up, and we're starting to fly back. And I'm like, hey bro, like, we got like a 2-hour flight. You want to play Angry Birds or something? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, all right. So I pull my phone out and I hand him my phone and he's playing Angry Birds for an entire hour. So that one kind of stands out to me. I laugh at that one. And then the other one is I was with Eben Latrimurti. He was on this podcast, good medic.
Is this the cruise?
No. Oh, God, the cruise.
Because the cruise is funny. And wasn't that Evan too?
Yes. Okay, now that you brought that up, yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, we'll come back to that. So Eben and I were working together, and I was going through my paramedic at that time. So he was trying to help me with some stuff and making sure everything was like up to speed with what I was doing. And the greatest part about going through medic school for me was that I was working with super high speed paramedics. And one of the things he was like, all right, you're going to do an assessment on this guy. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And I was like, cool. And all of a sudden he tells me, he's like, all right, check for the femoral pulse. And I'm like, dude, he's up and he's fine. He's like up and talking. He's like, yeah. And you're going to check. You're going to check for everything. Well, for those that don't know, the femoral pulse, you're like reaching into the groin to make sure you can feel a pulse. So, so now I did it. Like, and I'm like, yeah, it's there. He's like, good job. And that was it. And I'm just like shaking my head. I'm like, that I didn't need to do that. He's like, yes, you did. You needed to do an assessment to make sure. And I'm asking you to find it. And I was like, okay, training aspect, I dig it. Like, so I laugh at that one. And then the same one with Eben, we're on the cruise ship that was dead in the water. They had a fire on board. And I went down to the supply ship. Pat Barber was the hoist operator. And then I had Chris Galeen and Gene Reynolds with me as pilots. Oh my gosh, what a great crew that was. So they put me on the supply boat. I'm filling up baskets and bags and everything and sending them up to Pat in the aircraft. And then Eben went down to the cruise ship and he, while he's on the cruise ship, like he's getting all the stuff and rolling it off to the crew members and he's not getting wet. He's not like getting blasted by sea salt. He's like 15 decks up on the main deck and he's got all these people to help. And it's like me and 4 of the dudes down on deck and we're just getting hammered by the waves. And so I was like, you know what, whatever. And we throw like a couple boxes of yogurts in the rescue basket. And one of them just opens up and I was like, I don't even care. I'm just going to dump it in there. Hopefully they'll fall out on him. And then we get on. So Pat tells the story later where we have the video of it. And we get over the top of the scene and sure enough, some of the yogurts are falling out. They're like bombs hitting the deck. Boom, boom. There's yogurt everywhere. Oh, super fun time. God, I love what we do. So fun. So that's one.
All right, the last question for your career questions, and there's no name on this one, is do you have any pre-mission rituals or good luck charms?
No, I don't think so. I think once you get into the motions, I get onto the aircraft and I go. Yeah, it's just get in, get settled in, get comfortable and go. One of the things that I always have with me is I always have a picture of my lovely bride and my children. I love having that. And I usually keep it right like on me. But as far as a ritual, nah, just get in the aircraft and go. And you know what? I think part of that comes from the fact that I've flown and been on so many different aircrafts. I mean, heck, it's 14 different aircrafts in 8 different countries. You have to do something a little different in each aircraft. And not all of it was rescue, but training as well is just different. Yeah, it's just different everywhere you go. So to have that training routine, I guess the only thing I would tell everybody is if it's going to be a routine, make sure you know your emergency exits out of the aircraft. So, but outside of that, I don't think there was any rituals. No, sorry, man. Sorry to disappoint.
No. All right, podcast question.
Cool. Let's go.
From Kim.
Oh, our girl, Kim,
Yes.
who helps with so much on this
So
podcast.
much. Thank goodness.
I know, right?
Of all the stories that you've heard from all of your podcast guests, what is one story that sticks with you the most?
You know what, Kim? I don't have any that. Here's what sticks with me more than anything else is with all the guests that come on that are willing to tell their story. I think about the fact that it's a platform for them to tell the story, and for them in that story, it was the hardest, the greatest, the most impactful day of their life for whatever that story is. And I say that because we've had guys on here that have been in 30 and 40 and 50-foot waves offshore. There are guys that are in the mountains up at 10,000 feet. There are people surrounded by fire, picking hundreds of people up that are just stuck. And at the same time, there's somebody that had an impactful moment where they saw a car crash and an entire team jumped out of a car to go help somebody on the side of the road. And all they were doing was going to a competition, and that's not even their full-time job. They were just there. I mean, that's what they do. And there's so much in between of helping the dog that fell down the cliff down in South Africa. I mean, we just got to go get the dog. Okay. So as far as a specific story that stands out to me, I can't say there's one. I just love the fact that people are willing to share it and that it means so much to them that they got that adrenaline rush, that they experienced what I experienced. And yeah, I think that's what it comes out to. So there's not just one, it's just all of them. I love these stories, and I can't get enough of them. It's ridiculous.
I think one of the surprises for us both, I'll speak for you, because we've had these conversations, is the people that come on and tell their stories, and we hear about how therapeutic it is just talking about it because they've held on to these stories and these emotions, and listening to the other guests and then being able to come on and tell their stories, it helps them. We didn't expect that. It was more to get these stories out because they're so heroic and fabulous and wonderful that we feel that people should know. But to hear or to receive the messages, how, I didn't think I could talk about it and it's helped me and I'm ready to. I think that's been big.
That has been. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's been fun.
So how many podcasts are released as of this recording? We're in the 190s.
As of this recording, we're at 196 was just released.
All right. So I've listened to probably 194 of them because I'm a couple behind.
You are a full-time teacher and you do have a full-time job.
I know.
And I appreciate you listening to that's right, everybody. She has listened to every single one of your stories. Every one of them.
Yeah. And they're fabulous. And when I saw the question, what's a story that sticks out with you? I was like, oh, this one. Oh, but this one. Oh, but this one. Because there's so many. But I'm just going to tell you mine too, even though this is about you.
Oh, let's go. I love it.
One, and I can't remember his name. I think it might be Mike. It was way early on. And it was the one where he had like a really bad ending to a rescue. And then he had another one like back to back. And then the third one, I think it was like, he had a horrible rescue and then hit the dog on the way home. And he just was like, I had enough. Do you remember this one?
Mike Odell.
Oh, I will. And that was a couple years ago. That was one of the originals.
Yeah.
That stayed with me. Actually, you just mentioned that I'm a teacher. I went into work on like a Saturday to get ready. And I went in a very happy mood. And I was like, oh, I have to listen to the next podcast. And I turned on the episode. And by the end of it, I was just sitting in my chair like, oh my gosh. It was memorable. I mean, bless that man.
Yeah.
And then we just listened to one more recently about the bluebird, but we had heard about the bluebird before.
So Jeff Tunks came on. Mm-hmm. He was a rescue swimmer in the Bluebird Rescue. Amazing story.
That was the episode where he was yelling at someone in the back to sit down, and so no one was standing.
John Whitten is the pilot that we just released not too long ago.
Right.
Yep.
But it was Jeff originally that told the story about how he was like, sit down. Whoever's walking around, sit down. And no one was walking around.
Right.
And they were like, oh, like God was with us in that.
Yeah.
So that stuck out to me. And then the other one is Red Dog.
Red Dog. Oh, yes.
And the reason why this one stands out, what was he in? Was it Vietnam or am I?
Yep. No, that's accurate. So Red Dog, kind of a recap. Bill Moss, Red Dog. He was a Navy rescue swimmer, retired Master Chief out of the Navy. He started in Vietnam. Amazing stories. He's been on the podcast twice. He came on once to tell his stories. And then after that, he came on and we talked about how search and rescue was involved in a big raid to ships and stuff. It was an Asterix episode, super fun. But
the Red Dog episode, I remember listening to it in the car, and he was an older gentleman. And like my grandpa was in Korea, and then my other grandpa, I should know this, I'm drawing a blank. I don't remember which one. It wasn't Korea.
Okay.
Anyway, like they've passed away, and I will never hear their stories. And when they passed away, I was in my early 20s. So I wasn't at that stage in my life where I wanted to sit down and hear these stories. It was like, oh, another history lesson. And then I heard Red Dogs, and I was like, I really, really wish I could have had this with my grandparents. And at that moment, I became so grateful for everybody who's come on the podcast and put their stories down, because their families will have this.
Yes.
So I have a lot of stories that stick with me. So thanks.
Yeah. I'll piggyback off that and say this to everybody that's out there. I want not only these stories, when I ask people to come on this podcast, I want their stories remembered. And there are stories that are told on this podcast that never make the news. You never hear about. You might not even get a debrief at an air station or at another air station about what just happened. So the fact that guys, girls, and everybody around the world I don't know what happens in Australia. I don't. Ireland?
Oh,
My goodness.
Australia, New Zealand. Where's Chris from?
Oh, Chris Deegan. He's from New Zealand.
Where the dolphin jumped on the boat.
Yeah. Crushed the lady. Broke almost every bone in her body. Amazing stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's what we do to help those in need.
And I remember years ago, before you started the podcast, you'd already been talking about it for probably
a year.
35 years. But we were watching something, listening to something, and they were talking about a family in Hollywood that had drama. And it was like, why do people want to listen to that? Like, this just happened to somebody you knew.
Yeah.
Like, these are the stories the feel-good stories that need to get out there, not this stuff.
Yep.
And then we just kept talking about it.
And then the podcast was born.
Thank you.
And people are giving their stories, and I'm very grateful. Hey, Kim, thanks for the question. I
That's a
appreciate
great question.
Yeah. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Collins Aerospace Goodrich. Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Collins Aerospace's Goodrich hoists stay ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety.
All right, I don't really know this one from Daddy O Bear. 3/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce to jig for walleye while ice fishing.
All right. So
Question. I don't get that one.
All right. So this is I'm 90% sure this is Val, and Val runs the MRO Vertical podcast.
Okay.
So I'm supposed to go fishing with him. So he saw us at the lake, and he was like, "Oh, ice fishing." So that's where that comes from. So Val, I don't know. It's whatever you put on it for me, because I'm just gonna hang out with you and all your gear. So we're going ice fishing. We're gonna hang out and tell some stories about rescue and maintenance.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you want me to ask this question from Emily?
Go ahead.
So we asked on Instagram for questions for episode 200. And we have a question from my best friend that says, what'd you do to get such an amazing wife?
You know what? I don't know.
I don't know.
I delivered her stuff to her doorstep, and
here we are.
And here we are.
It's working. All right. We do have one last question, but I want to know, back at this year's DCERT,
Okay.
you went around asking rescue swimmers about something funny or a funny story that happened in the helicopter or something that they did.
Oh, on a swimmer training flight.
Okay. I forget how you worded the question, like something funny that happened to you.
Yeah, what's the funniest thing that happened to you on a rescue swimmer training flight?
That was the question. So you didn't answer the question.
No. I've actually been thinking quite a bit, like, I'm not really. Oh, yeah, I do.
No.
I have a couple. Go ahead. Oh, that wasn't a training flight, honey. We're going to get into that. We can get into that story. Yes.
So, shall I preview? Or should I kind of review this story?
I'll tell you what, let me answer the question.
Okay.
All right. So the funniest thing that ever happened to me on a swimmer training flight is it was actually I'm going out, I'm with Mr. G'day. He was my pilot at the time, and I was just arriving in Humboldt Bay, California. One of the guys that was coming out with me had just graduated swimmer school. I can't remember his last name. Oh, sorry, brother. Anyway, so we go out on a swimmer training flight, and when we go down to the water, and I'm jonesing because I have not done a swimmer flight in about a month and a half. So I haven't been on the hoist hook. I haven't jumped out of a helicopter, and now I suddenly am again. And I am like totally jonesing. So as we're coming up, I'm like, dude, this is awesome. I love what we do. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, man, this is freaking sick. And so we connected the helicopter and ready for pickup. We're coming out of the water. Well, at the same time we're coming out of the water, the key to my mic to my radio keyed up. So I'm now transmitting on open airways. And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. I love what we do. Yeah. And we're like screaming. And the pilots are like, tell him to let go of the hot mic. He's on mic. He's transmitting everything he's saying right now across the world. Tell him to stop. And I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. And we're like high-fiving as we're getting up. And we get up and our flight mate says, hey bro, your radio's on. I'm like, oh, my bad. So that's one of the funniest things that happened to me on I'll say a swimmer training flight. Can I do one more story?
Hey, it's your episode, cool. 200.
So I had one more incident while I was on a training flight, which I was funny, not funny, but it was yeah. All right, so here we are, Humboldt Bay again, and I'm in the water, and we're just off like way off, not way offshore, but offshore enough that we're a couple miles, 10, 12 miles offshore. And the seas weren't too bad. It was nighttime, just a standard training flight. They're dropping me in the water. And while I'm in the water, I'm bobbing around doing my thing. And it was the instructor was sitting left seat, instructor pilot sitting left seat, student pilot sitting right seat. Now the student pilot still actively, like he's on duty, qualified pilot, but they're upgrading his syllabus to like probably PIC at the time. Anyway, so they lower me down to the water and I'm chilling in the water. I'm kind of bobbing around, ready for pickup. Yep. Waiting. And then all of a sudden I hear this, and I'm like, what the heck? The helicopter starts to like, the nose goes down. They fly like right over me and then they take off. And I remember looking and I'm like, where the heck are they going? This was not part of the plan. And again, to go back, that distinct sound of, and I was like, what the? So I jump on the radio. I'm like, hey guys, you guys good? And all I get back is stand by. Like, I'm out in the middle of the ocean. It's like 10 o'clock at night. It's dark. And I'm waiting. And all of a sudden they're like, swimmer 6'5", blah. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like, yeah, we just over torqued. We're RTB at this time. We've got another helicopter coming to pick you up. Just when you hear them not con them in, vector them into you, pop smoke, and they'll be there to get you in a minute. I was like, roger that. Not a clue. So I'm bobbing in the water. The other helicopter is miles away from me too, by the way. Like they're training in a whole nother area. Like I know they're around, but so anyway, so I'm bobbing in the water. The other helicopter comes up. I'm, vector them in. Hey, I'm at your whatever. Come in, mark. And then they roll in a pop smoke or a flare. And they're like, yep, cool. They come in, they pick me up. And now we RTB, we go back to base. Now, the rule was you had to, if you're going to do a training flight, you had to have either you have to have cover. So you need either have a second aircraft with you, so 2 aircrafts flying, or you need to have an aircraft and a boat. So we had the 2 aircrafts. Well, something happened to the first aircraft, so now we have to go back. So we land. Come to find out that the co-pilot leaned over to see where I was at in the water to give a good visual instruction as far as, hey, these are the things you're looking for at night, under goggles, not under goggles, blah, blah, blah. And when he leaned back in the 865 Dolphin, the 2 fuel shutoffs were like right there, and his helmet got caught on one of the fuel shutoffs or one of the engine shutoffs, And he literally pulled the engine back to idle. And that's what I heard. And it was like, oh, and they jammed it back up, which freaking over torqued everything. So they basically were losing an engine and dropping out of the sky. So they did the flyaway maneuver. And like, I don't know any of this until I get back to base. I'm like, oh, well, thanks for not landing on top of me. I appreciate that. So anyway, that's that story. It's good. So the last one, the one okay, paint the picture.
Here we were. So after you got out of the Coast Guard, you worked for a training company.
Yep.
And you were in Louisiana. And there were many times where you would have to get called out. You would get called out and you would go somewhere. And from wherever you flew to, you ended up having to go to the hospital. And fill in the details for me because I only know a little bit. You would get to the hospital and then it would be too late or too something. You couldn't go back. So you have to spend the night.
Yep. Like in a hotel or, because your duty time is over, your flight time's too maxed out or whatever.
So you'd have to spend the night. Well, no one was prepared to go and spend the night. So none of you had cell phone chargers or whatnot. So there were nights where like you would be at work and I wouldn't hear from you. And usually I hear from you. So I remember saying to you one day, if something happens, like how am I going to know? Because unfortunately in today's day and age, I don't want to find out on Facebook that something happened.
Right.
So I was like, how am I going to find out if something happens to you? Because there are some nights you just don't call me and I'm assuming you're stuck somewhere, but I don't know. And you were like, don't worry. Someone will call you. You'll get a phone call from so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm like, okay. Not 2 days later, 3 days later, my phone rings and I look and it is a weird phone number. I answer the phone and I hear, hey, Mel, it's Lenny. And I immediately started to cry. Lenny says to me, I'm in the helo with Quinny. He wants to know the score of the Bruins game.
We want to know.
We want to know the score of the Bruins game because the Boston Bruins were in the playoffs at the time. I was so mad.
Oh, gosh. It's so funny.
The timing. It was the timing.
Yeah.
We totally just had the conversation and you told me somebody would call. And then you called me. The only time you have ever done this.
From the helicopter. Yeah.
Ever. Was 2 days after that conversation to ask me the score of the Bruins game.
All right, so here's some of the backstory to that. So we were.
If you're trying to get
sorry,
people to think
honey,
this is okay with the backstory, have that.
I'm sorry. Let me apologize now. I'm sorry, honey. Okay, now, but for all the listeners, tell me if I'm wrong on this one. All right.
It was the playoffs.
So here we are. We're sitting at in our little trailer on duty and watching the playoff game. Like, as a matter of fact, I think the score was tied and we get launched out and we're like, come on, we're going into the third period right now. This is ridiculous. So we get launched out and we're cruising like back and I think we landed on the rig or whatever. And then as we're coming back, we're like, man, I wonder if they won. Man, this is a big game because it was tied. The series was tied. It was going like game 7 or something. And then we had a conversation in the aircraft. Well, you know what? We got Skylink in here. Let's make a phone call. Who can we call? I was like, Mel's going to be watching the game. I guarantee she'll be watching the game. She'll know. She'll give us the update. And Lenny's like, yeah, we'll call her. You want me to call her? I was like, absolutely. You can call her. Now, in the aircraft, I can't talk to you like that. Only Lenny can. So the greatest part about it is like, and I can hear everything. And I'm so excited because we're going to find out the score of the game. And we're still an hour out from landing. And he's like, I think it was the way he said it too to start out with. Hi, Mel. This is Lenny.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the score of the Bruins game right now? What? I'm hearing you kind of tear up in the background and I can't say anything. It's terrible. That's funny, not funny. It was hilarious. So, honey, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. Final question.
Yes, ma'am.
preview of the future. What's next?
For the podcast. Gosh, I have a lot of ideas.
You don't say.
Yeah. There's times when I say, hey, I've got an idea, and Mel looks at me and be like, stop. Just stop. No.
You do this the minute I walk through the door. My bag is still on my arm. My purse is still on my arm. I've been with 9-year-olds all day, and you're like, hey, I have an idea. And I'm like, give me a second.
Yeah, it happens all the time. That's funny. All right. Anyway, so they're you know what? Depending on what ideas come to fruition, there's exciting stuff coming. So I will tell you this: that I've had a lot of people that I've talked to on this podcast and other family members, and you know, it's humbling when I get somebody that writes to me and says, "Hey, thank you for recording these stories, and thank you for what you're doing to help these stories be remembered." And with that, I will do everything in my power to keep this podcast going, to keep the memories and these stories going. I don't want them lost. I really don't. And if I have a way to keep this platform open, to continue to record and continue to get these stories, I absolutely will. Some of the other ideas that I have coming is just showing off more capabilities, and maybe to answer a few questions about how to get into some of this stuff, because there are not enough answers out there to that question. Like, how can I do that? And I'm hoping that I can get some help and make some things happen to help answer some of those questions. So that's what I'm hoping for.
You have so many ideas for what's next.
Totally.
So many.
Yep, a ton.
And those are all the questions that were sent to us.
Cool.
So this is your episode. Do you have any other stories you feel like sharing?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Okay, well, what advice would you offer to anyone who wanted to become a rescue swimmer, join the Coast Guard, move overseas? What advice do you have?
The advice that I would give is, first of all, don't quit. Don't quit. If you want it bad enough, go get it. And that comes from with anything. Just don't quit. Like, there's one thing to stop something because of whatever. Maybe it's not working for you. Maybe it's not a passion that you have. But whatever you're doing, just don't quit. You want to be a paramedic? Go be a paramedic. Don't quit. You want to be a rescue swimmer? Go be a rescue swimmer. Just don't quit. Drive on, move hard, move fast, and do what it takes to get the job done and finish the job. Get through the training. The other one I would say is, the other advice: take care of yourself the best that you can, physically and mentally. A shout out to Operation Restored Warrior. I went out to them, and wow, what an amazing,
It was a game changer.
It was. And you know what? I'm going to promote Operation Restored Warrior because it was so impactful for me. I loved it. I was grateful to be a part of that group and go there. There are other ways that you can do that. There are other foundations to help mental stability, PTSD stuff. Like, we as the rescue professionals see some crazy stuff, good, bad, or indifferent. There are avenues that you can talk about it, and that's the way to go. And the last thing I would say is, man, stay in shape, eat healthy, get to sleep when you can, and work out. Go to the gym, go for a run. You don't have to actually pay for stuff. Like, as a matter of fact, running is free. Push-ups are free. Sit-ups are free. Air squats are free. I would say pull-ups are free, but you tend to need a pull-up bar, so that might actually cost something. But you can find something to hang on, right? Just get after it. Do something to stay healthy. Move. So I think those are my pieces of advice for people. Oh, you know what? Rule number 1, don't be effing lazy. Okay.
That kind of encompasses all of them.
You're darn right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 200. I appreciate being here. It was fun.
Sweet.
Good hearing more stories. Thank you for thank you to everyone that submitted a question. I hope you liked the way that we did this, the style that we did this. All right. Well, have a great day and keep listening. We appreciate everybody sticking with us for 200 episodes. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go. Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Collins Aerospace Goodrich. Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Collins Aerospace's Goodrich hoists stay ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety.
Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at ReadySwimmer.com or through TheRealResQ.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready? And
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
all right, Rollerblade, where are we going, buddy? Where are we going? Ooh, you're gonna see in a second. I'm getting a haircut. I'm getting a haircut, buddy. Oh, snap. Who's excited? Are you nervous, buddy? Are you nervous? Oh, man. It's only a haircut, buddy. Oh, Rollerblade, look how good you look at it.
Come on, hit me, Mom.
Stick.
Thank you.
Come here, buddy. Hey, come here. Come here. Look at the new haircut, huh? Looks like a good job with a new haircut.
He's not shaking now.
Man, you look so good. Yeah, this is me and my new haircut, right? This is my boy. My boy's got a new haircut too. And together we're gonna run the beach. It's gonna be awesome. Cause my boys, we all got the same haircut.